Hey friends, Pastor Bill Walden here with Build Up the Church. God bless you. This is a devotional word for November 24th, 2024, and this is out of the book of 1 Peter chapter 3. In this first portion of chapter 3 of the book of 1 Peter, Peter is instructing wives and husbands about how to live together, how to dwell together, how to conduct themselves in marriage and in the home. And we're going to focus on the men. And we find one verse. I would kiddingly say that's all that the men can handle. So one verse 7, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Husbands, likewise, dwell with your wives, dwell with your wives with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together with the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. Let me read it in the New Living Translation. In the same way, you husbands must give honor to your wives. Treat your wives with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. So, husbands, the first thing, dwell with your wife. You can be roommates in a marriage, or you can be living life together. And I might be taking a little liberty with that word dwell, but to me, dwelling with your wife doesn't mean you just both get your mail at the same address. It means you're living life together. And if the word doesn't exactly mean that, it's a good idea anyway, isn't it? Do life together. Share life together. The Bible says that the husband and wife become one flesh. And so how inappropriate it is to be one flesh with your wife and yet living separate lives, running in parallel lanes, not running in the same lane. So husbands, spend time with your wives and do life together. Don't just be running off to your buddies and hanging out in somebody's man cave, watching football all the time and going on fishing trips all the time and not doing anything with your wife. Dwell with your wife. Have life together with your wife. Do it with understanding. This is a very interesting word. In my limited knowledge of the Greek language, there are two words for the word understanding. One is gnosko, and that means to learn something by observation. The other one is oido, and that leans more towards having an instinctual understanding of something. So sometimes people have a good instinct about, fixing electronics or repairing a car or understanding how something works. They know it kind of instinctually. Well, that's not the word here. The word here is gnosko, to understand by observation. And so, husbands, we are to study our wives. We are to pay attention. God created men and women differently by design and by purpose, on purpose. God made men to be one way and women another way. And so there's so much about my wife that I don't instinctually understand, but I have to pay attention. I have to learn about what's important to her. Husbands, do life with your wife and observe her and understand her. Don't try to figure her out by instinct, but pay attention. Pay attention to her facial expressions, to pay attention to her tone of voice. When something happens, how does she respond? Notice when she's happy, when her face lights up. What are those things that brings her joy? What are those things that bring her concern? Don't expect her to feel about life the way that you do. She's not built that way. And so pay attention to your wife, because you are one flesh with her. You're not just roommates, you're one flesh with your wife. So pay attention. Give her honor. And this is something revolutionary in that first century. Women were just considered property. Wives were just considered property. And so to give your wife honor was something that was absolutely revolutionary to that culture. Honor your wife. Esteem her. It's to recognize the value that God has created her to be and the value that is assigned to her by God. So honor your wife. As to the weaker vessel, I think this just simply means she's not physically as strong as you are. And maybe some brutish husband, would just look down on his wife because she's physically weaker. Well, that's brutish. That's pretty low. That's animalistic even. And so, yeah, she's weaker than you are physically, but many times wives are emotionally, psychologically, mentally, spiritually stronger than their husbands. But Peter is here speaking to something, and we don't know exactly what the context is, but it doesn't matter if she's weaker than you physically. It doesn't matter. But honor her, and don't give her less honor because she's weaker than you. Honor your wife. As being heirs together of the grace of life, she might be weaker than you, but she's absolutely your equal in regards to salvation and heaven and all the gifts of God and all the promises of God. And so you don't minimize your wife at all. And he says, do these things that your prayers may not be hindered. I wonder how many Christian men that are not seeking to understand their wife, and they're doing life apart from their wife, and they kind of look down on their wife, and then they're praying and God's not answering their prayers, and this very well could be the reason why. Men, if you're a Christian and you're praying about things and you feel like the heavens are closed to your prayers right now, let me ask you, are you living life with your wife? Not just living in the same house, but are you living and dwelling and doing life with your wife? Are you understanding her? Are you paying attention to those things that are important to her and ministering to her in those ways that are important to her? Are you honoring her? God honors her. You need to honor her. And if you do these things, your prayers won't be hindered. But if you don't do these things, God says right here through the Apostle Peter, your prayers will be hindered. And so, husbands, guys, it takes effort to understand our wives. They're not built like us, and they're not supposed to be. And you're not built like them, and they're not supposed to be. I wonder if that's why sometimes guys get so easily frustrated with their wives, and they retreat to all their buddy friends, and it's football and, working on cars and hunting trips all the time. Because guys just understand guys. It's instinctual. But men, we need to understand our wives by observing them and paying attention to their feelings and their tone of voice and their facial expression and the things that they do. Pay attention, guys. Let me close it off by reading the New Living Translation. In the same way, you husbands also give honor to your wives. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are, but she's your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. So guys, one verse, but plenty to do, isn't it? So some things to think about. God bless you guys.